Dear Daddy, I miss you. Please come to my play tomorrow. I saved you a chair. Love, Emma. The words were uneven, written in bright crayon across a folded piece of pink paper. The letters leaned awkwardly, some too tall, others too small, but the message was heartbreakingly clear. It wasn't elegant, but it was honest. It wasn't polished, but it was pure. Marcus Hale stared at the note as if it didn't belong in his world. He sat behind a glass desk on the 42nd floor, a skyline of steel and light stretching behind him. The hum of New York pressed faintly through the windows. Traffic horns, distant sirens, the restless city marching on. Yet here, in his hand, was a child's plea that didn't belong in boardrooms, didn't belong in his briefcase, didn't belong to him, because Marcus Hale didn't have a daughter. And yet, somehow he did have her note. To understand how it got there, the story had to begin hours earlier, in the storm of another morning. The city moved like a living machine, gears grinding, engines humming, people flowing as though pulled by invisible strings. Marcus walked among them, but not with them. His stride was calculated, purposeful, his black wool coat slicing the February chill. In his right hand, he carried the same polished leather briefcase he carried every day, the one he trusted with contracts worth millions, the one that always clicked shut with perfect precision. He never noticed the way people shifted when he passed. The doorman nodded more deeply. The receptionist straightened. The elevator passengers fell into silence. Marcus never asked for reverence. He simply carried it, his presence sharpening the air like glass. The elevator rose, its reflection throwing his own image back at him. The trimmed jawline, the neatly parted hair, the cold blue eyes always on the next deal. His phone buzzed and his voice slipped into the crisp authority of business. Yes, the documents must be finalized today, he said, fingers tapping the railing. If they can't deliver, we cut them loose. I don't tolerate mistakes. The doors opened briefly on the mezzanine. A blur of motion darted past. Too small to register, too quick to notice. A hand brushed his briefcase, so light it felt like nothing. Marcus barely shifted his weight before the doors closed again. He forgot it within minutes. By the time he reached his office, the blur had dissolved into the machinery of his morning. Meetings stacked back to back, phone calls layered with deadlines. But when he placed his briefcase on the desk and flipped the latches open, something unexpected stared back at him. A folded pink paper, worn at the edges, nestled between his pen and the contracts he had prepared. Marcus frowned. He never carried stray papers. He lifted it, his fingers brushing over the waxy crayon, and unfolded it with a strange reluctance. The words glared up at him, simple yet devastating. Dear Daddy, I miss you. Please come to my play tomorrow. I saved you a chair. Love, Emma. He read it twice, 3 times, as if repetition would clarify the absurdity. He didn't have children. He had no Emma waiting for him at a school play. His life was schedules, profits, and a penthouse that echoed with silence. And yet, for reasons he couldn't explain, his chest tightened as though the words had found a crack in his armor. A knock at the door broke the moment. His assistant leaned in, brisk and professional. The board is waiting for you, Mr. Hale. Marcus folded the note, slipping it back into his briefcase with a precision that betrayed unease. 2 minutes, he said, his tone even. The meeting dragged on, executives presenting charts and forecasts, their voices fading against the thrum of his thoughts. Marcus sat at the head of the table, the authority figure everyone deferred to. But inside his mind, a child's handwriting scrawled across pink paper over and over. By evening, when the city glowed like molten gold through the windows of his penthouse, Marcus stood in the dark, untouched dinner on the table, television, muttering about markets he no longer cared about. The note was in his hand again. He traced the crooked letters with his thumb, whispering the name under his breath. Emma. Somewhere across the city, in a neighborhood hidden from glass towers, a little girl with golden curls sat on her bed, legs folded beneath her, clutching a worn stuffed bear missing an ear. Her mother, Claire Dawson, leaned against the doorframe, exhaustion etched into her features, her diner uniform still smelling of grease and coffee. Do you think he'll see it? Emma asked, her small voice threaded with hope too fragile to carry. Claire forced a smile, though her heart ached with the weight of truth. Maybe, sweetheart. Maybe he will. Emma nodded, sliding beneath her blanket, her lashes lowering as sleep claimed her. Claire sat beside her longer than she should have, brushing curls from her daughter's forehead, whispering silent apologies for things beyond her control. Tomorrow was the school play. Tomorrow, the chair beside her daughter would still be empty. At least that's what Claire believed. But in a penthouse overlooking the city, Marcus Hale couldn't sleep. A pink crayon note sat on his nightstand, pulling at something deep inside him, something he had long since buried. And for the first time in years, Marcus wondered if tomorrow his schedule might break. "Please come to my play tomorrow. I saved you a chair." The words echoed in Marcus Hale's head long after the city stirred awake again. He had read them so many times that the uneven letters seemed burned into his vision. Each crooked crayon stroke carried a weight his $1,000,000 contracts never had. Morning light spilled across his penthouse windows, cutting long golden lines across the polished floor. His phone buzzed with reminders, conference calls, deadlines, investors waiting in London. But Marcus ignored it, staring instead at the pink paper resting beside his untouched coffee. He wasn't a man given to distractions. He thrived on clarity, on clean lines and measurable outcomes. Yet this child's letter had unsettled him in ways he couldn't define. Who was Emma? And why did it feel as though her words had found him on purpose? By 9 o'clock, he gave up the illusion of focus. He slipped the note back into his briefcase, fastened the locks, and left his apartment. His driver looked startled when Marcus asked for a different destination, one far from boardrooms and offices. "Take me to Brookside Elementary," Marcus said flatly, his gaze locked on the passing streets. The name had been scrawled in tiny letters on the bottom corner of the note, almost like an afterthought. It was the only clue he had, but it was enough. The school sat in a quieter part of the city, where brick walls bore the faded paint of murals and playground swings creaked with rust. Parents clustered near the entrance, their chatter filled with laughter and exhaustion. Marcus felt out of place instantly, his suit too sharp, his presence too polished for the worn sidewalks. He stood at the edge of the street, briefcase in hand, watching the flow of children stream through the doors. Each carried backpacks plastered with patches or cartoons, voices bubbling with excitement. None of them noticed him. But then, one little girl caught his eye. She was small, maybe 6, with golden curls bouncing against her shoulders. Her pink hoodie looked worn, her shoes scuffed, her backpack too big for her frame. She held her mother's hand, tugging insistently as though eager to get inside. Marcus's breath hitched. He didn't need confirmation. He knew this was Emma. The woman beside her, her mother no doubt, looked older than her years. Blonde hair pulled into a messy braid, face pale from long nights, coat fraying at the edges. But her posture carried strength, the kind that came from surviving more storms than anyone should. Emma stopped suddenly, bending down to adjust the strap of her backpack. For a moment, she glanced around. Her eyes swept the street, and for one heartbeat, they landed on Marcus. Her gaze was piercing, ocean blue and startlingly direct. She didn't flinch, didn't shy away. Instead, she smiled. A small, hopeful smile that carried far too much weight for a child. Then she was gone, tugging her mother through the school doors. Marcus remained rooted to the pavement, his chest tightening in a way he hadn't felt in years. He told himself it was curiosity, nothing more. He had stumbled into someone else's story by accident, and now he was simply following the thread to its conclusion. But deep down, something heavier stirred, a shadow of memories he had tried to bury. That evening, Marcus found himself walking streets he hadn't seen in decades. The neighborhoods of his childhood, the cracked basketball courts, the old library still standing though its windows were fogged with dust. He remembered a different boy, one who once scribbled notes on torn paper, begging for a father who never came home. Back in his penthouse, Marcus sat in the dark, the city spread before him like a glittering lie. He pulled out Emma's note again, reading it slowly, deliberately, until the words blurred. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing. He couldn't ignore the chair Emma had saved. The next day dawned gray, clouds hanging low over the city. Marcus's driver hesitated when Marcus gave the same destination. "Sir, your meeting with the Tokyo branch. Cancel it," Marcus said firmly. The car stopped outside Brookside Elementary just before 10. Children's laughter drifted from the building, high-pitched and pure. Parents filed in, carrying cameras, holding bouquets, eager for the small stage inside. Marcus stepped out, adjusting his tie, though for once it gave him no comfort. The briefcase remained behind in the car. Today, he needed empty hands. Inside the school auditorium, rows of folding chairs stretched before a makeshift stage decorated with painted cardboard trees and glittering stars. Children peeked from behind the curtains, giggling nervously. The air buzzed with anticipation. Marcus scanned the rows of chairs until he found it. Third row, middle seat, A small sign taped to the back in crooked handwriting. Reserved for Daddy. He froze, his chest tightening. The seat was empty. For now. A voice startled him. "Excuse me, are you looking for someone?" He turned. Claire Dawson stood in the aisle, her daughter clinging to her side. Claire's eyes flicked from Marcus's polished shoes to his perfectly knotted tie, suspicion flashing in her tired gaze. Marcus's mouth went dry. Words didn't come easily to him in boardrooms, but they always came. Here, with a child's hope hanging between them, he faltered. "I found this," he said finally, pulling the note from his pocket. He handed it to Claire with unusual gentleness. Her face paled. She looked at Emma, then back at Marcus. "Where did you... how..." "It was in my briefcase," Marcus explained, his voice quieter than usual. "I don't know how it got there, but I think... I was meant to see... it." Emma peeked from behind her mother, eyes wide, lips trembling between fear and hope. Did you read it?" she whispered. Marcus's throat tightened. He crouched slightly, meeting her at eye level. "Yes, Emma, I did." The girl studied him for a moment, then glanced at the empty chair with the sign taped to it. Her voice was soft but unwavering. "Will you sit there? Just for today?" The auditorium buzzed with laughter and chatter around them, but in that instant, everything fell silent for Marcus. He didn't know why his heart pounded, why his chest felt like it might break. He only knew his answer. "Yes," he said, his voice breaking in a way it hadn't in years. "Just for today." And with that, Marcus Hale, the man who ruled boardrooms but had never once stepped inside a child's school play, took his seat. "This seat is for Daddy." The words stared back at Marcus from the crooked sign taped to the chair, written in the same uneven hand as the note that had shattered his routine. He sat down slowly, his pulse quickening, feeling as though every parent in the room could see, through him. He was a stranger in a place he didn't belong. Yet the little girl standing before him looked at him as if he had always been meant to be there. Emma beamed, her golden curls bouncing as she clutched her mother's hand. "See? Mommy? He came," she whispered proudly, her voice ringing just loud enough for Marcus to hear. Claire's gaze lingered on him, uncertain, guarded, but something in her expression softened when she saw Emma's joy. With a sigh that carried both relief and fear, she guided her daughter toward the stage. The lights dimmed, and the room fell into a hush. Parents leaned forward with phones ready. Children shuffled nervously behind cardboard trees and painted stars. Marcus sat rigid in the folding chair, his expensive suit creaking against the cheap metal, feeling out of place and exposed. Yet when the curtain rose, all his attention shifted to one figure. Emma. She stepped onto the stage, a paper crown slightly crooked on her head, her small hands trembling around a script she'd memorized but still clutched like a lifeline. Her eyes scanned the crowd, searching, until they landed on him. And then, she smiled. Marcus felt it like a weight lifting from his chest, a warmth cutting through years of silence and solitude. He didn't realize he was smiling back until he felt the unfamiliar stretch of his lips. The play was clumsy, the kind only children could make magical. Lines were whispered too loudly, costumes slipped. A painted cardboard star collapsed mid-scene, sending the audience into quiet laughter. But Emma never faltered. Every time her gaze drifted, she found him, and each time, Marcus gave a small nod, steady and reassuring. Claire sat a few rows away, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her eyes flickered between her daughter's joy and the suited man who had no reason to be there, yet sat as though he belonged. Confusion battled with gratitude inside her, and though she tried to quiet it, her heart betrayed her. When the play ended, applause filled the room, thunderous and proud. Children bowed awkwardly, teachers waved, and parents rushed forward with hugs and flowers. Emma, still glowing, darted off the stage, weaving through the crowd until she reached him. "Did you see me?" she asked breathlessly, her cheeks flushed. Marcus crouched down, his hands resting on his knees, his voice unusually soft. "I did, Emma. You were perfect." Her eyes lit up, brighter than the stage lights. "You didn't miss it." The words struck him harder than he expected, knocking against memories he'd locked away. A boy with dark hair, a wife's pleading eyes, a moment he'd dismissed for a meeting that no longer mattered. His throat tightened. "No," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Not this time." Emma flung her arms around his neck, hugging him with all the force her small frame could manage. Marcus froze, his body stiff with shock. Then, slowly, something inside him gave way. His arms lifted, tentative at first, then firm, wrapping around her like she was the only fragile thing in the world worth protecting. For the first time in years, Marcus Hale felt human again. But when he looked up, Claire was watching. Her eyes shimmered with emotion she couldn't disguise, but her expression hardened when she noticed how tightly Emma clung to him. She stepped forward quickly. "Emma," she said gently but firmly, prying her daughter's arms away. "Come. Here." Emma pouted but obeyed, slipping back to her mother's side. Claire straightened, her gaze fixed on Marcus. "I don't know who you are or why you're here," she said quietly, her voice calm but edged with steel. "But this was kind of you. Thank you. Now you should go." Marcus rose slowly, towering over her, though his expression held no arrogance now. Only gravity. "I didn't mean to intrude," he said. "I just found her note." Claire's lips tightened. "She leaves them everywhere. Bus stops, books, strangers' mailboxes. She's looking for something I can't give her. You don't understand what it does to her when someone takes it seriously." Her voice wavered, but she forced it steady. "Please, don't encourage this. She's just a little girl." Marcus wanted to argue. He wanted to tell her he did understand, that he knew better than most what it meant to leave a child waiting in vain. But the words stuck in his throat. Emma tugged her mother's hand, whispering, "But Mommy, he came. He's different." Claire closed her eyes for a moment, torn. Then she led Emma away, weaving into the crowd until they disappeared. Marcus stood alone in the emptying auditorium, the pink sign still taped to the chair behind him. He reached out, peeled it free, and folded it carefully into his pocket. Later. That evening, as the city bathed itself in twilight, Marcus walked the streets aimlessly. He had skipped meetings, ignored calls, let the empire he built run without him for a single day. For once, he didn't care. The image of Emma's smile haunted him, fragile yet fierce, carrying more weight than the applause of hundreds of investors. And behind her, Claire's wary eyes lingered in his thoughts, sharp with fear, softened with gratitude, heavy with a strength he recognized all too well. By the time he returned to his penthouse, night had swallowed the skyline. Marcus set the folded sign beside the crayon note on his desk. 2 pieces of paper, worthless in the world of contracts, priceless in the world of longing. He sat back in his chair, staring at them, knowing one thing with absolute clarity. This wasn't over. Maybe you weren't a good daddy before, but you could be one now. The words had come from Emma, whispered into Marcus Hale's chest when she hugged him after the play. He had replayed them in his mind through the night, each syllable cutting deeper than any deal he'd ever negotiated. They weren't just words, they were an invitation, one he wasn't sure he deserved. Morning came gray and heavy. Marcus sat at his desk, staring at the 2 pieces of paper before him, the pink crayon note and the folded, reserved for daddy sign. In a world where everything he touched had a price tag, these scraps of paper were the only things that felt priceless. For once, the city below him didn't matter. Neither did the contracts, the boardrooms, or the endless chase of more. He couldn't shake the memory of Emma's small arms around him or the guarded look in Claire's eyes. By noon, Marcus made a decision. He had to see them again. Claire. Dawson was folding laundry when the knock came. The sound was steady, deliberate, and somehow she already knew who it was. She opened the door to find Marcus standing there, his suit immaculate as always, but his expression carrying something softer, almost uncertain. Emma squealed, darting past her mother to wrap herself around his leg. "You came back!" she cried. Claire's heart tightened. She pulled Emma gently away. "Go wash your hands, sweetheart. Lunch is almost ready." When Emma skipped off, Claire folded her arms. "Mr. Hale," she said carefully, "I appreciate what you did yesterday. But you don't need to come back. She gets attached too easily." Marcus nodded slowly, his gaze steady. "I know, but I think maybe I'm the one who's attached now." Claire blinked, caught off guard. "Why? Why would a man like you, with your world, your money, your everything, care about us?" Marcus hesitated. For years he had buried the truth. But looking at Claire, the tired strength in her face, the wariness in her eyes, he realized hiding it served no one. "I had a son," he said quietly. His voice cracked on the word. And a wife. They were killed in a car accident because I chose a meeting over being with them. I thought there would always be more time. I was wrong. Claire's arms dropped to her sides. Her breath caught, and for a long moment she said nothing. Marcus pressed on. When I found Emma's note, it felt like it was written to me, like it was a second chance I didn't deserve but couldn't ignore. Silence stretched between them. Then Claire whispered, "She doesn't need a savior, Mr. Hale. She just needs someone who shows up." Marcus's voice softened. "Then let me show up." Weeks passed, and Marcus did. He showed up. At first awkwardly, standing at the edges of Emma's world, walking her to school, reading a bedtime story in a stiff voice that grew warmer with each page. Soon, the routines became natural. He learned to braid ribbons into her hair, to redo shoelaces he always tied too tight, to carry spare crayons in his pocket just in case. At night, in Claire's small apartment, Emma would curl against him with her stuffed bear and whisper, "One more page, Daddy." And every night, Marcus said yes. Claire watched from the doorway, torn between gratitude and fear. The sight of her daughter's laughter was everything she had longed for, yet it terrified her to trust it. Men had walked away before. What if he did too? But Marcus didn't. The bond between him and Emma deepened, undeniable, until one evening Claire found Emma asleep in his arms. He looked up, eyes red, his hand brushing gently over the child's curls. "She called me Daddy," he whispered. Claire's throat tightened. "Maybe that's who you are now." Not everyone agreed. One afternoon, a man appeared at Claire's door. Richard Dawson, her late husband's brother. He wore a stiff suit and an expression carved from stone. "I heard you've let some stranger play father to my niece," he said coldly. "That's not family. That's desperation." Claire stiffened, shielding Emma behind her. "You've never even visited her. Not once." Richard's eyes narrowed. "I'm filing for guardianship. A child deserves stability, not a billionaire's guilty conscience." The words struck like a blow, and soon they were in court, the air heavy with judgment. Emma sat beside Marcus at the front, her small hand locked in his. Richard's lawyer painted Marcus as a distraction, a man with no blood ties, no claim. But when the judge asked if anyone wished to speak, a small voice rose from the silence. Emma stood, trembling but determined. She walked to the center of the courtroom, her chin lifted high. "My name is Emma Dawson," she said. Her voice shook, but her words were clear. "And I already have a daddy." Gasps rippled through the room. "He reads to me every night," Emma continued. "He makes mommy smile. He holds my hand when I'm scared. And he never makes me feel small. I don't want another one. I picked him." Marcus blinked hard, emotion breaking past his composure. The judge leaned back slowly, his voice steady. "In light of this testimony, the demonstrated bond between the child and Mr. Hale, and the absence of a prior relationship with Mr. Dawson, this court denies the petition." Claire wept silently, her hand over her mouth. Emma ran back to Marcus, throwing her arms around his neck. For the first time, Marcus didn't feel like a man pretending. He felt like a father. Months later, on a winter night dusted with falling snow, Marcus invited Claire and Emma to his rooftop garden. Fairy lights sparkled against the dark, a small table set for 3. Emma squealed at the cupcakes waiting on the plates, but her eyes grew wide when she saw the tiny velvet box with her name written in Marcus's handwriting. She opened it carefully, revealing a silver necklace with a charm engraved in delicate script. Family. On the back, a single word. Forever. Marcus knelt beside her, his voice steady. "You taught me what family means, Emma. And no matter what happens, you'll always have me." Emma hugged him fiercely, whispering, "You're my forever daddy." Now. Then Marcus turned to Claire, pulling a second box from his pocket. His hands trembled, but his voice was sure. "Claire, you walked into my life like a storm and somehow made it a home. I don't want temporary. I don't want convenient. I want real. Will you be my family?" Claire's tears spilled as she nodded, falling into his arms. Emma clapped her hands with delight. "Can I be the flower girl?" Marcus laughed softly, holding them both close. "You'll be more than that." 6 weeks later, in a small chapel filled with white roses and soft music, Emma scattered petals down the aisle in clumsy handfuls, her proud smile never fading. Claire walked behind her in a simple gown, radiant in her quiet grace. At the altar, Marcus stood waiting, his vow trembling with truth. I didn't believe in second chances until I met two girls who made me want to be someone worth loving. Claire's voice broke as she replied, I thought love meant sacrifice, but you showed me it can mean home. Emma joined their hands together, beaming up at both of them. And when the ceremony ended, Marcus scooped her up, kissing her forehead. You chose me first, remember? He whispered. Best choice I ever made, she whispered back. That night, as snow fell quietly outside, they danced barefoot in the thaw. Living room? No music, just laughter and joy. Not broken pieces anymore. A family. And that was the story of how a little girl's crayon note slipped into the wrong briefcase, but found exactly the right heart. Because sometimes love doesn't arrive with grand entrances. Sometimes it whispers through a child's hope, through second chances, through the courage to believe that family isn't always the one you're born into. It's the one you choose. This is Echoes of Heart. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that remind us that even the smallest voices can lead us home.